Alright, so this is our 2D art first tutorial. So let's go ahead and go to File and then just click New. What I'm going to do is, you see you have all these options here. I'm going to start off with mobile. And I'm sorry, not mobile, film and video. And I'm just going to change my resolution to 300. Because, and let's stick with 1920 by 1080. And where it says white here, we're going to go background color and let's do gray. The reason I selected this, let's do a 80% gray. Like that. You can just type in 80 here and hit OK. Is because when we're drawing for games, this is more of like a game / animation. We want to think in how we're going to see it within a monitor or a drawing or game view. So this might be something like drawings that we do for concept art or what have you. Now, the next step we want to do is go up here, and this is going to let us switch our viewing mode. We want to make sure that we're in painting. And this might get a little annoying at first, but I'm actually going to say all of the hotkeys as I'm working, just in case those who are viewing this aren't familiar with it. So I'm actually using a Wacom Cintiq for this tutorial, so you can use tablets or whatever. I kind of actually like drawing on a tablet more. So let's start off talking about the basic setup for perspective drawing. We'll talk about setting up Photoshop and respective brushes and stuff later. So the first project is to do 40 cubes in perspective space. So let's first talk about the fundamentals of how to set up your Photoshop area for perspective. So the first thing you're going to do is, if you don't see your rulers, is hit Control R or go to View and click on Rulers. And then I want you to drag out a ruler roughly at the 500 mark. You can go a little bit lower if you like, but just for now, stick around the 500 mark. And this is going to be our eye line. Now, the way that you want to think about this as your horizon or eye line is, I think the definition somewhere online is that it's the eye in infinite space. That means you looking as far as your eye can see into infinity. So a way of thinking about this is, we're just going to draw, I'm going to draw two eyes, sort of a fish-eyed head. All right, so let's say your head was this wide. And you're looking at something that exists down here. So this is below your eye line. So you're actually looking downward. Okay? So here's the edge of a cube that's standing right in front of you. And so here's our eye. Let me go ahead and change our color up a little bit so we can see that. Now you have one eye looking at it this way. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Control H to get rid of that guide for a second. And your other eye is looking at it this way. And it's going to give us this sort of fish-eyed view. Now I know you can click and hold Shift to give yourself a straight line. I'm not necessarily looking for the cleanest drawing at first. I'm looking more for you to get a feeling for drawing. And let's say that we can observe the view going this way. So it's about this wide. Then we're going to take this eye and then look at that corner. That's going to give us this. We'll take this eye, it's viewing this corner. And then the same thing here. I'm going to actually draw it very lightly coming off this way because I don't want us to get confused in 3D space. So we have roughly our cube that looks like this. Right? And to really demo this, I'm going to push a little harder with my tablet pen. You can see there's our cube in 3D space. So that's how our eye views it off of the horizon line. Now, I use an approach to drawing that is a lot like Rodin and other sculptures, and actually the way Michelangelo illustrated. He used to say that I love sculpting, he hated drawing or painting, but the truth is I'm sure he loved it. And the fact is it's a pretty good book I'm reading of Michelangelo, where he talked about like, and I can fill you in on this story later, but just essentially that when he was painting, he felt closer to God. All right, so more than in sculpture. So let's take a look at this. So what does it mean to draw sculpturally or draw like Rodin or Michelangelo? Well, to do that, I'm going to jump to a 3D application. Well, here we are inside of Maya. Now, a lot of times I see a lot of artists, especially beginning artists, they'll use the sphere in here to create eyeballs. They'll use it to create anything like beach balls or whatever. This, in my opinion, is actually wrong. The reason is, you need an even distribution of these vertexes, that's these little dots here, to give you accurate lighting. And when you have triangulation like this, you don't get good lighting and you don't get a very nice shape. You get a very triangulating looking shape up at the top, or this pinching, this ugly pinching. So when you see great sculptures by Michelangelo that are carved in marble and carved in stone, they have a very nice etched look that they use to accentuate lighting. So how do you get that in a 3D application or when you're drawing? Well, if I start with a cube, just like any other, just like a sculptor would, so here's sort of our block of clay, and I slowly chip away at those edges. So one way of quickly doing that is by holding Shift and right-click and going to Smooth. And you can see that I'm starting to get a faceted sphere. And the more subdivisions, that means the more times I cut into it. So let's go ahead and cut this. You can see it gets smoother. Now we have a perfectly quadred out sphere, and those edges give you a nice, beautiful, faceted look for lighting to hit it. And you get an even distribution of lighting and shadows. So inside of drawing, I'm going to go ahead and pause this and jump back into Photoshop. If we look at our cylinder, or our cube in 3D space, I can actually just go in here and draw by connecting all of those edges. Here, let's go ahead and go with a different color here so you can see that. I can actually grab that sphere. And this actually helps a lot if you are drawing things like a car, right? So let's say we're going to put a wheel on a monster truck. So I'm going to extend this out. I'm looking out over here. Let's go with a darker color here. Here's the side of my car, right? I'm looking at it from this angle. And I know my wheel is sitting roughly this far out. So I'm going to mark that. And I know it's roughly, let's say it's roughly this tall. I can just continue those lines out. Just kind of keep that going. Connect this edge, sitting against that surface, right? Now all I have to do is draw that wheel base. And there's my wheel sitting in 3D space. So that's the reason a lot of the great masters started with a cube. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and hit G, Alt to select that gray color, and I'm going to fill it again. All right, let's take a look at that one more time. But let's I don't want this video to run too far, but we're already at 7 minutes. Let's talk a little bit about what our view or eyes actually see and how to create very nice drawings. So one of my favorite artists is John Singer Sargent. And the reason for this is his art is so appealing that he knew how to draw your eyes to the most important areas. And the way he did that is he mimicked life and mimicked the way people really see, the way your ocular channels work in your brain. So for example, the human eye only has a 60-degree radius, and I'll draw this out in Photoshop for you to see it, of viewability. So as we're looking at this young girl's face here, we see all of the detail that he wants us to see, the expression. He's capturing the emotion, her confusion, what's going on as she enters this room. She sees her young sister playing, right? But if we look across, our eye naturally blurs out things at a 60 degree, almost right about 60 degrees, our eye starts to blur out or lose that shape. Now, mind you, Michelangelo, a lot of the great artists did the same thing. I was looking at I was in the Sistine Chapel 2 years ago, and I was looking at a lot of Michelangelo's paintings, and though he's kind of criticized for being almost comical in his forms, but they were dead. His illustration and painting were dead to life. You had this loss. See how she starts to blur and fade out into reality. You're almost getting that crystallization that happens, the greens and blacks in your eyes from a dark scene. So inside of Photoshop, let me sort of illustrate this for you. So here we are back in our scene, and we have a guy. Let's go ahead and sketch him out, and feel free to follow along with this. So I'm just going to draw a sphere in a box, and this represents us or whoever's standing in our scene. And let's say our feet are standing at this angle. So here's our one eyeball. Somebody's looking at us from this angle. Always try to imagine. Here, let's put a dot there, and then a dot here so I can remember, and I'll hit Control H to get rid of that. There's somebody looking at us from this angle, and there's someone looking at us from this angle, okay? So we're looking out this way, and then we have a line that comes off this way. And this is the edge of our room, okay? So as we come along like this is the edge of one side of our room, and then here's our floor. And then here is the wall. So we're just going to go straight up off of this, okay? So this is our perspective, our perspective view here. Now here's our field of view. We have a cone that we can see. Remember, we have an eye line. So our viewer, we are the third person in this scene viewing all of this, right? We have one person viewing at this angle, we have another person viewing at this angle, and then we have this person here. You always want to think about the subjects in your scene and what they can see. So their dead center eye point is right here. This is what they can see, right? So in this view, anything at about 60 degrees is going to start blur out or lose focus. So we only have a cone, an ocular cone, that's about here. So if we were going to illustrate what this person sees, it would only be sharp at this point. So this would be the sharpness of a person's face. Like we have all this surface detail, right? And then as they come out this way, their hair might start to fuzz out, right? And as we go down that 60-degree angle, the buttons might start to fade out in the shirt. Okay. Now one last thing, let's go ahead and fill this again. So let's talk a little bit about your assignment, okay? Don't worry too much about the sphere. This is more of an introduction to Photoshop. I want you to figure out a way to squeeze in 10 cubes on each page for 4 pages. Okay? So you'll select maybe one eye point on each scene. So maybe this is one eye line. And I don't want you to use the guides. The only tool that I think I'm fine with using is if you click, you hold Shift as you draw, it'll create a fainted line like that, right? You can hold Shift, click here, and then hold Shift to click here. Oops, let's try that again. Click here and then click here. Let's try that one more time. There we go. Here and here. Come on. There we go. You can just kind of go back and forth to really illustrate that. But I like the idea. It's okay if it's a little crude. I need to calibrate my tab a little bit better. Oop, let's get rid of this. But that's about the only tool. And I want you to come up with 10 cubes a page. Okay? So something like that. And this is going to help you sort of think about and refine your eye for 3D shape. And here's cube 1. And then you could say, okay, let's put one down here. And get something like this. I'm going to disable the Windows stuff too. Alright, same thing here. Push a little harder. Alright, so that's your assignment.